UConn head into Indianapolis to take on Butler on Saturday, and joining me today, he's been on the podcast before. We've got Akeem Glaspie of the Indianapolis Star. So Akeem, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I know UConn Butler always brings some interesting matchups here, but let's talk early season so far for Butler because it looked like it's kind of been a tale of two halves of the non-conference for them. Seemed like the first half they'd gotten off to a really good start. They had that early season loss to Austin P, but went on, they beat Northwestern, beat a good Mississippi State team. But of late, lost four in a row, beaten up pretty badly by Houston. They lose to North Dakota State, Wisconsin, now Marquette. What has kind of been this, kind of non-conference schedule for them and kind of this tale of the two halves that we've seen from them?
Yeah, so the Austin P game was supposed to be the wake up call. After talking to Thad, he's like, yeah, this obviously was a bad loss, but the team responded well. They were taking coaching well, they were implementing the game plan well, and then you saw that. Obviously, they played well. They responded again with the Arizona tip off games against Northwestern and Mississippi State. They looked really good. It looked like they had turned the corner, and then we started to see that wasn't the case. I mean, the first true road game was at Houston, which is that's a really tough place
Yeah.
to play. They got smacked in that game, which is, I mean, obviously you want to see them be a little bit more competitive. They lost by 28 points, but that's understandable. But the North Dakota State game, that was the game where it was like, okay, well, maybe the Austin P game wasn't such of a mirage.
Yeah.
Maybe this team isn't quite as good as we thought. And they just got beat. It wasn't like that there was like a bunch of smoke and mirrors. No, like North Dakota State for a large portion of that game had the two best players on the team. Jakari White, I believe he had like six threes in the first half. He was playing so confident, and you haven't really seen that out of Butler. So that was a weird loss. And then again, it's just kind of snowballed from there. I was at Marquette or 2 days ago, and they were leading in the first half. They had, I believe, a 4 point lead heading into halftime, and then you get like back-to-back turnovers to start the second half, and then it just again it starts to snowball, and that's something that's kind of been the case for this team is turnovers and just long scoring droughts. And then Thad said the team has to be more resilient, and obviously they'll need that against UConn because if they're to get down early, then that could get ugly. But yeah, the team just hasn't really responded to adversity that well. When things start to go bad, things start to go off the rail for this team.
So I'm good. Let's talk the roster a little bit as we look towards this matchup. It seems like just like looking at some of the recent losses for Butler against these teams in this past 4 or 5 game stretch here. It seems like the big guys on the opposing teams have really caused Butler some problems. Saw the Nolan Winter and Stephen Crowley at Wisconsin go off. Money from North Dakota State. UConn obviously, still TBD on if Butler will see Samson Johnson, but you'll at least get Terrace Reed, who showed what he could do against a relatively undersized Xavier team the other night. Do you see that matchup being one to take a look at as you look at this game?
Yeah, I mean, and Butler's like technical starting center. He's not your prototypical center, but Augusto Cassia, the sophomore, he's out with a knee injury, so he's not playing. So they actually against Marquette, they didn't start a center at all. They moved Landon Moore into the starting lineup in place of Andre Screen, who is the 7-1 Bucknell transfer. He's the kind of prototypical center that you'll see that it's going to be up to him because I would imagine against UConn they'll need him to start. And he's been really up and down. He's never been the best defender, especially for someone 7-1. But when he starts to play poorly again, it kind of goes off the rail for him. So excuse me. So yeah, he just needs to play better, and he's been very inconsistent. He's shown that he can score in the paint, but protecting the rim is not his strong suit. So against UConn, I know you guys don't have the centers that you did last year, and like a Klingon, but they'll need him to protect the paint, and that's something he's been struggling to do.
When you UConn fans look at this Butler team, obviously familiar with a couple guys that they saw, in previous years against Butler, Telfort and Pierre Brooks are the two that kind of stick out to me. Are those the two guys that, as Dan Hurley and his coaching staff are looking at this matchup, that they're kind of focusing on, hey, if we could take these guys out of the game a little bit, we like our chances here?
Yes, and Shaka Smart basically said that the other day. Like he called them loads. Pierre Brooks and Jamil Telford are they're a load, and yeah, they're big guys. They're both probably 230, 240 plus, and they're yes, if they're scoring well, Butler's doing well. So yes, they're going to be the ones you need to stop. And if Butler has any chance, they're both going to need to score 20 plus. So it puts a lot of scoring on them. And Patrick McCaffrey's been shooting well, but they're the key cogs of Butler's offense.
When you look at the rest of this roster here, I know we mentioned a few names here, but who else sticks out that might be newer for UConn fans or guys maybe playing some elevated roles that they haven't seen out of Butler in the past?
Yeah, so if you're a college basketball fan, you probably know Patrick McCaffrey, Iowa transfer in his sixth year of college basketball. Believe it or not, he's kind of emerged as the third scorer. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in the Big East, which is kind of a transformation he's made as a player since his time at Iowa. He's probably the main kind of cog there, the third kind of go-to player. Finley Bizjack has moved into the starting point guard role, but it's kind of only a de facto point guard because Jamil Telford is the one who's going to have the ball in his hands the most. But to start the game, Finley will run the offense and he can push the pace and set guys up. And he needs to shoot better from the outside, but theoretically he's a strong shooter. He kind of came in with that reputation, but yeah, Finley's playing more. Landon Morris is he's kind of, and Kobe King is, and he's kind of another new face, a Tulane transfer by way of St. John. So maybe UConn fans are a little bit familiar with him, but he's a real spark plug. He's also a really good rebounder for a guard, lightning fast. He's kind of could be a microwave scorer. So he's another person to watch out for, kind of a newer face.
Looking to add some local flavor to your lineup? Martin Rosals is the MVP of your game day spread and a slam dunk for any occasion. Proudly made in hard-hit New Britain, their famous kielbasa and hot dogs have been a fan favorite for over 96 years. You can find their products in grocery stores across the state or have them delivered directly to your home court, coast to coast, via martinrosal.com. Take your taste buds to the championship and go support a UConn fan-owned business. I know we've talked a lot about the struggles that Butler has dealt with recently, but when they have played well, what's been the strength of this team that if they're going to have a chance to really compete with UConn and win this game, what would that be? What would that kind of game plan look like?
Yeah, it's going to be one of Jamil Telford or Pierre Brooks going for about 30. I would say that's probably if they want to have a chance, they're both going to have to score in the 20s.
Mhm.
If Jamil or Pierre goes for 30, then they might have a chance to win. And Patrick McCaffrey hitting 4 or 5 3-pointers. So basically all on the offensive end. I don't think that it's not going to be a grinded out game. That's not really their style. They don't really have the players to shut you down and grind it out. Augusto Cassie was probably their best defender. He was a great weak side defender as well. So he cleaned up a lot of the mistakes that would happen in the paint, and a really strong perimeter defender as well. So they could switch 1 through 5 when he was on the court. So that's a huge missing piece that might not necessarily show up on the stat sheet or in the box score, but he was just a key cog to that defense. So it won't be a defensive grinded out game. This will be like the Creighton game last year, like 89-85. That's kind of what Butler would want, or how they need to play at this point in the season.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I know when you look at Butler, you got the noon start, Hinkle. It's got some of those magical elements to it. So we'll see what happens in this one. But I know everyone's looking forward to another Big East matchup here against Butler. I'll wrap with this one. I know this Butler team is looking to bounce back in, and I think those thoughts have been with this team, for the past few years here. What's the kind of the mindset of the fan base right now going into Big East play here, as they're trying to kind of get out of that lower to middle of the pack in the Big East here.
It's hard to say because when the people I interact with or the people that reach out to me on Twitter, those are the diehard fans. Those
Yeah.
are the vocal minority. So that I might be have a little bit of a skewed perspective, but I'd say they're a little disappointed. I would say, and myself including, after the Arizona tip off, I was like, okay, this is a tournament team. This
Yeah.
is one of the top 65 teams in the country. There's no doubt. And then now it's like, oh man, they might be one of the worst teams in the Big East, especially with Georgetown, the way they played the other day, really handling Creighton. It's like, okay, well, that's another team that might have leapfrogged them in the Big East, and so it's going to be an uphill battle, that's for sure. I would say pessimistic. If I had to put one word on the fan base, it'd be a little bit pessimistic. But again, it only takes one, a Marquette, for a half against Marquette, it's like, okay, maybe they're back.
Yeah.
A win against UConn, then things would completely change. But heading in with on a 4 game losing streak, pessimism is kind of what we're experiencing right now.
All right. Well, I've got a guy in Indiana. I got to ask because we're recording this a couple hours before Notre Dame, Indiana tonight. Who do you like in that one tonight?
Oh man, I think Notre Dame is probably the better team, but IU is such a good story. How could you not root for
Yeah.
IU, right? I mean, yeah, everything they've got going on over there. I cover high school football as well, so I know they got a lot of really good kids on the IU squad.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have nice kids on the Notre Dame side as well. But I'll go IU just because it's such a great story, such a great turnaround. And I'm sure a lot of people like to root against Notre Dame too.
Yeah.
So yeah, IU. It's just yeah, it's really things have been a buzz in Bloomington and around Indiana. So yeah, it should be a great game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, unless you're a Notre Dame alum or you've got some connection to Notre Dame, I think pretty much everyone's gonna be rooting for Indiana tonight. So, Akeem, I appreciate you hopping on here the night before the game. Looking forward to another Butler UConn matchup here. So, thanks so much for hopping on.
Thanks for having me.